finished the initial install of the Arduplane software. I'm going to hit what I did really fast. Under mandatory hardware, you saw me do the accelerometer calibration before I put the board in. In the compass tab, I unchecked the two compasses that didn't exist that are checked on default. I verified this was the correct compass for the F765 wing, and it was. I will do the compass calibration later. I did the radio calibration, and I ended up reversing these two channels, the roll channel and the elevator channel. I'll speak just a little bit about that in a second. In the servo outputs, I did a pass-through on 9 and 10. I'm going to use 12 for link quality, 11 for the modes, 9 and 10 for pan and tilt, 8 for return to home, and 7 for the OSD screen changes. That leaves me 4, 5, and 6 open. We're still in the same place with ESC calibration, though I got it done another way. I set up these modes with the manual and the circle on the outside because I'm going to use the 6 buttons across the top of Radio Master TX16S, and I just want them on either end so I can get to them quick in a panic. And I buried auto in the middle, and I have guided cruise and fly by wire around it. I've never played with this, flown with this. I will make that better or worse as it happens during the build. There's nothing else down here that need be done. In the optional hardware, I've not even talked about the telemetry radios yet, but that's upcoming. I'm not doing that right now. We'll address that in a separate video. The battery monitor, I verified based on the F765 hardware data sheet that my amperage per volt, voltage divider, pins, everything was correct on the battery current sensor, and I set 5800 milliamp hours as the battery that I will be flying. I will be coming back to do the compass motor calibration. This sets up the compass so that electrical interference from the motor is compensated for. I did come into airspeed and simply said use airspeed and made sure it was the exact Maytech airspeed sensor. There's nothing else that you really do in this part. There is some settings. You see in flight modes, you can see that I have channel 11 as my mode change channel. What else? That's all you can really see in here. And these channels were reversed when I went in and tested manually that my control surfaces were working correctly, and also when I went in and put it in that stabilized mode and made sure that the flight controllers movements of the control surfaces when a nose dipped, went up, banked left or right were all correct. That required these two servos to be reversed in this screen. Don't know anything else to say about all of this. Whoops, there is one more on the compass. I turned on automatic learning of the offsets. Those are the declination, they call it. It's the difference between true north and magnetic north. And there's actually, this is going to turn on learn, but I will be kind of using a new one they've put in the firmware recently. It's a little different, but I'll show you when I set that up. So that's all there is to setting up down through the setup here of the Arduplane. Now where I actually go to do the setup is over in this area. And it's actually in this full parameters list Let's just hit all this real quick again. Flight modes appear here just like they do in the setup tab. Of course, the same information is shared. This I do later when I want to fine-tune the flight controller flying of the platform. I don't do this at all. This is your standard parameters. These are your just kind of general. I don't really work in this list either. I don't work in the advanced parameters list that much because I just work in the full list. But neither here nor there. I do work in here. And I did work in here. I did set channel 7 as the channel that is going to control these 3 screens. I am going to change this right here to a pulse width modified instead of the way it was. I did pick imperial. These are all changes from the default. I did pick various things and set them up on this screen. I copied this screen to screen 3 and added GPS latitude and longitude. And I went into screen 2 and I made it just a blank screen. I just wanted it out of the way. Also in these screens I set up a PWM range on switch 7, channel 7, that if the PWM is in this range, screen 1 will show. If it's in this range, screen 2 will show. If it's in this range, screen 3 will show. That's the end of this. This is my old crap screen where I want to know the GPS coordinates of where the crash is. This is my old crap screen when I'm flying over here just hanging out and looking at stuff and I want to go, oh crap, am I going up or down? I will flip to this screen and know that I get my altitude and vertical speed right here. User parameters, I don't really do them, but you can come in here and set up channel 8 to be returned to launch. I work in this full parameters list. So this full parameter screen is where I make most of my changes. Not all of them. Can't calibrate your radio here. You got to come down through the setup items first. Then you can come up here and make all your changes. Oops, I see another one I want to make that I didn't make yet. I know it's only a change of 1, but I really like 7 satellites before you let me fly. It's personal preference. So that's one I just changed. All the other ones I changed or were changed when I worked through the setup screen are highlighted in green here. This was the orientation of the board. You remember I yawed at 180, turned it around directly opposite of where it flies. This is some of these also make little changes inside the perimeters when you do those. I did not actually do that change, the flight controller did. I changed from the default return to launch altitude from 10,000 centimeters, which was like 327 feet, to 3657, which is right at 120 feet. I changed the arming rudder from the default 1 to 2 so that it both arms and disarms. Airspeed used, this one was changed when we clicked the use airspeed over in the setup screens. This is where you set the battery milliamp hours. I changed that one from the default. We did set up in over there a return to home battery cell failsafe, but I set it to a high voltage of 15 volts. Nowhere near what a flight will be, just so it would be high for the maiden, but it wouldn't failsafe soon. If there were things going wrong, it would fail safe kind of early, I guess. this compass declination is kind of starting to read in because I said auto learn right here is where this was changed when I told it learn. Now I'm going to change this again because I think the new in-flight learning 3 is better. So instead of a 1 that this got, because I checked learn over on the compass screen and setup, I'm going to actually change that to a 3 tab. This is where the compass motor compensation values will be put in after that calibration is done. Compass is oriented normally, no change there. This is where I removed compass 2 and 3 in the compass screen and setup. Don't have to do that, just something I do. All the rest of this I'm leaving at defaults. This is all the flight mode channel 11, and this is all the flight modes I set up. That's why there have been changed from defaults. This is where I calibrated the accelerometer, and those calibrations were put in here, and these numbers were changed from the defaults. This is the OSD channel where I set it to 7. This is where I set it so that a screen will select a screen based on a PWM range. These are the location and enabling or not enabling of certain values. Those get changed when you set up your OSD. I did come in and enable OSD 2 and 3. That's why these are currently a 1. When I reload the flight controller, it will add all these 100 lines of parameters for OSD 2 and 3 that aren't shown right now, like all this stuff from OSD 1. Altitude right here. All these parameters will be duplicated and put in this parameter list for OSDs 2 and 3 when I save this. So this list will be much longer the next time it's loaded. I have not enabled OSDs 4, 5, or 6. You can have them if you like. All the rest of this, I haven't changed much. You can see on some of these RC channels where this channel is reversed. I did that by checking a box over on the radio calibration in the setup tab. Those changes are reflected here. RC8 option 4 being a mode return to launch was reflected here. All of this I did not change. I've gone through one of these on one of my videos and kind of told you what all of these are. Here's a servo 10 function where 1 gave me a RC pass-through. Whoops, RC pass-through right there. It's for the pan and tilt. That's why this is reflected over here. There's servo 4 function. That would have been the rudder. Had this airplane had rudder, it is now disabled. This has to do with serial. This is your throttle cell fail-safe. It doesn't reflect the value where I set it to enabled. Return to launch and set it. Oh, this is the throttle cell fail-safe. I was thinking battery. Never mind. This is where I turned it from its normally enabled at 950 PWM. I just turned it off for the maiden. I will turn that back on and check that in a flight soon after the maiden. That's all the changes I made from the default. So I'll click right parameters here. See all this little flashing going on the screen? That's because it's writing the parameters. That's not really the way it should be showing you that it's working, but that's what's actually happening, because so many of them have to be rewritten, some have to be added, and this will finally pop up and say parameter saved. Click. Then I am done. This is my first pass through and will give me basically what I want. It could be flown at this point. Things I will say real quick. On the RC channels, there's 16 of them in the setup. You can come over here. I'm just going to jump down with a search over here. RC1. This is everything that has to do with RC1. You can see here for any RC channel, here's all the options you can do with that channel as far as setting up, whether it's a rudder, it's the right aileron, it's a new whiz-bang, something you put on top of it, and all sorts of other things, including users scripts that you can run, all sorts of things. I don't even profess to know everything that's on here. 87 is crow select. I guess that has to do with flipping both ailerons down in a turn for a crow function, or that might be for flipping them down and as pseudo flaps in a landing sequence. I don't know. I know a lot of these, what they are, but this is where, like I say, you can set up your aileron on channel 9, your throttle on channel 16, your left aileron on 2, your right aileron on 13. This is where you do that. Oops, the dehumidifier just turned on in the background. I'm going to go on. And this is what I'm talking about, all the ease of setup in Ardu. I'll erase this. Come down through here to one last thing. Let's go servo 1. This is another thing, the configuration of Ardu for each servo channel, which there's 16 of this type of thing in here. You can do a pass-through flaps, tilt the mount. Here's control motors, throttle, elevon right, VTEL right and left, scripts. You just pick through this list and tell it what you want the servo function to be on each one of them. This is probably why people are just hard to learn Ardu. It is just completely configurable, period, and there's a lot of it. So with that, I'm going to say it's ready. It could be flown now. Certainly in manual mode. I kind of trust a lot of my setup. It could be flown in a flight controller mode, but you know, I haven't calibrated the current sensor or done the compass motor compensation. That's finer tuning than what this is. You know, if the battery's at 16.2 whatever it is volts when it starts out, 16.8, and it shows it as being at 17 or 15. If I do a short flight for a maiden, it isn't going to kill a thing. I can come back later and make this amperage, board voltage and amperage. Amperage is not on here at this time, but you know what I'm saying. More precise. So that's it. Basic software installation and tuning done. Thank you.